Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, and in today's video I'm talking about something that's really special to me, and that is menstrual cycle awareness. Now if you've seen my videos before or you've been like following my channel and stuff, you know that I talk about menstrual cycle awareness a lot. But I've never actually made a video on menstrual cycle awareness, and I realized that when you hear that term, you might be like, what is she talking about? So I wanted to make a video that was dedicated to menstrual cycle awareness, not only because it's a practice that has changed my life, but I think it's something that will change your life too, and that's why I talk about it so much. So I wanted to make this video just to like explain a little bit more about menstrual cycle awareness and when I'm talking about it, what I actually mean when I'm talking about it. Now, menstrual cycle awareness doesn't have like a clear definition in the dictionary. Hopefully one day it does. But it was actually a term that was coined by the founders of Red School, Alexandra Pope and Sonny Hugo Wurlitzer. And they came to define menstrual cycle awareness as the practice of paying attention to where you are in your cycle each and every day and how to support and take care of your changing cyclical needs. Menstrual cycle awareness is a mindfulness practice, and the founders of Red School believe it is intrinsic to women's health. And I definitely believe that. If you have a menstrual cycle, then menstrual cycle awareness is for you. What it helps you understand and discover is just more about your body and more about your cycle and how your hormones may impact how you feel each day, from phase to phase, from cycle to cycle. It's really something that is incredibly beautiful, and it's something that is incredibly empowering. So for me personally, I see menstrual cycle awareness as a way to cultivate self-compassion for myself, as well as like my changing needs and how to honor where I am in my cycle and in my life. It also really empowers me to be a cyclical being, and it makes me feel very grounded in my cycle and my decisions and my choices and what I do and even what I do with my life, you know, making a YouTube channel all about this. And it also helps me observe, chart, as well as interpret my menstrual cycle and my fertility signs, which is otherwise known as body literacy. So it helps me cultivate more body literacy around my body, which has always been something that I've struggled with. And I think a lot of us struggle with that because we're constantly told as young people that our cycles don't matter or that our cycles are terrible and it's normal to feel like our cycle is ruining our life and all that kind of stuff. And that might be an experience that you've had before or you're currently struggling with, but I'm just here to tell you that things can change. And menstrual cycle awareness is a way to support yourself and change that narrative around your cycle so your cycle can become your ally rather than your enemy. And I know menstrual cycle awareness might sound really complicated and you're like, this sounds like a lot. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. But really, the foundation and the heart of menstrual cycle awareness is cycle tracking. And so I have a video on cycle tracking if you want to learn a little bit more. This was one of the first videos I filmed, so I'm definitely a little nervous in it, but it's still a great video, and maybe one day I'll like redo it because I've grown a lot on camera, I feel like, but it's still there for you to learn more about. And really, cycle tracking is just about tracking how you feel each day, emotionally, mentally, physically, and even spiritually. And the nice thing with menstrual cycle awareness is you can track really whatever you want. So when I started practicing menstrual cycle awareness, I had a journal and I charted everything. I definitely recommend if you're just starting out to really just track for the first few months, just track everything because you'll get to know your body and your cycle so well from doing that. And you'll start to notice that like your energy changes, your strength at the gym changes, your creativity changes throughout your cycle, your sociability and like how much you want to go out will change. I mean, you know what I'm talking about here. Your confidence changes. All of these things ebb and flow. And so when you start to pinpoint in your cycle when these things are like really working for you and when these things need a little bit more support, then you can like plan your life accordingly. And you'll start to understand like when it's the best time to like hit a really hard workout at the gym, or when the best time would be in your cycle to do a TED Talk. And that's the really amazing thing with menstrual cycle awareness is you start to understand and you can like schedule and prioritize things that will help you truly listen to and understand the feedback your body's giving you each and every day. And you'll start to see what's working for you in your cycle and what's not working for you. And so once you start tracking your cycle and you start to know these patterns and habits you have, you can then determine what your cyclical strengths and vulnerabilities are of your cycle. That's kind of what these patterns and habits you have are kind of called, right? Like a lot of them might be strengths that you have, and some of them might be some vulnerabilities that you find in your cycle. And these cyclical strengths and vulnerabilities you have are probably going to look different to the ones that I have. Like we're all unique. But the amazing thing about menstrual cycle awareness is it shows you where the power is in your cycle. It also shows you where there are some vulnerabilities that you can maybe support better. So for me personally, my cyclical strengths would be like, I feel very confident and very good in my pre-ovulatory and ovulatory phase of my cycle. In fact, I am in my pre-ovulatory phase right now, and that's when I really, really love to film YouTube videos. I feel like my skin's nice and clear. I feel like I can talk a lot better and say things that I want to say. I'm like smiling. I'm just feeling good and happy, and it's a strength of mine. And I've really noticed that through my practice of menstrual cycle awareness. Like when I film and make YouTube videos or create content in my pre-ovulatory or ovulatory phase, I do my best work at that time. It doesn't mean that I don't do good work in my premenstrual or my menstrual phase of my cycle. No. I can flip that switch and I can do great work in those phases, but my strengths really lie in like the middle of my cycle. That's when I really do feel like my most confident and I feel my most creative. That might be different for you. You might be like, girl, I feel so creative when I have my period, or you might feel more creative when you're premenstrual. That's the amazing thing with menstrual cycle awareness. We all have different strengths in our cycle, and we can use that and we can work with it rather than like against it. And so it can be really easy to work with your strengths, but what can be hard is recognizing our vulnerabilities in our cycle. So for me, one of my vulnerabilities is I feel very sensitive and kind of irritable in my premenstrual phase. It used to be a really difficult time for me in my cycle before I started practicing menstrual cycle awareness, and I felt a lot of shame and embarrassment. So what I would do is, instead of like talking to like my partner about it or talking to people about it, I would just like shove it down. And so I wouldn't express my feelings. I wouldn't say that I'm feeling a little bit sensitive or that I'm a little bit irritable. And it just got worse and worse and worse until I started to practice menstrual cycle awareness and understand that that phase of my cycle, my premenstrual phase, is a really, really great time for me to cultivate more self-care as well as alone time. I'm an introvert, and so I really like to have some alone time, and in my premenstrual phase, I really crave that. But giving yourself alone time can be easier said than done, and I totally understand that. But just giving myself like a little bit of time and then just being upfront with my partner and opening up communication and letting him know like, hey, feeling a little bit sensitive today, I need my time alone. That was so good for me to do because now my premenstrual phase is so much more manageable. I don't feel these feelings that I used to feel. Like, it's gotten so much better. So feeling sensitive and irritable in my premenstrual phase was one of the vulnerabilities that came up for me that I had to start to support better. Another vulnerability that started to kind of come up for me when I really started to get into menstrual cycle awareness was my inner critic. So my inner critic, which if you don't know what an inner critic is, it's basically that voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough. My inner critic is pretty good most days. She kind of just does her own thing, doesn't bother me. But I started to notice around cycle day 25, she would come out to play and she would be really mean. And sometimes it would catch me by surprise and say some really mean things. And as I started to journal more and track my cycle and start to see these patterns, and I started to understand like, wow, my inner critic really only rears her head around cycle day 25. I can use that to my advantage. So now when I'm around that time of my cycle, I recognize that like, hey, this is the time when your inner critic is going to come out and play. Maybe take some time off of social media and maybe give yourself some more self-care and just like be prepared that she's going to come out and play. And that was so big for me and so life-changing. And so I'm not going to say that my inner critic doesn't come out and play anymore. Oh, she does. But I'm way better at acknowledging her and then just letting her do her thing and like not listening to her. And so that was another vulnerability in my cycle that I realized that I had to be better at supporting, because your inner critic, it can turn into a lot of different things and it can manifest in a lot of different ways, and it can be really, really hard to get a grasp on it. But menstrual cycle awareness is a really, really great way of understanding like when it comes up for you in your cycle really strongly and what you can do to support yourself. So these are just examples of some strengths and vulnerabilities in my cycle. Of course, there's a lot more examples, but I wanted to give you some personal examples that maybe ring true for you, or maybe they don't. Maybe you don't understand what my struggles are, and that's okay, because we all have different strengths and vulnerabilities in our cycles. And I would love to hear if you know of any of your strengths and vulnerabilities in your cycle. And if you don't know, it's okay, because starting today, you can start tracking your cycle and you can start practicing menstrual cycle awareness and you can start to have fun and rediscover these parts of yourself that you might not have known were there, or maybe you forgot were there. Menstrual cycle awareness is also really, really amazing because it will help you open up communication with your partner or partners or your family about where you are in your cycle and how you're feeling. And that, I think, is a really, really important piece of the puzzle when it comes to us feeling our best. Because if we can be more open with the people around us about where we are in our cycle and what we might need from them in terms of like maybe some support, then everyone wins and we're all going to be on the same page. Communication is just key in all relationships, and it is just so important to be open. And menstrual cycle awareness can cultivate that because it helps you no longer have shame and embarrassment around your cycle. It helps empower you in your cycle and live your truth. And it helps ground you in knowing that this is who you are and these are your strengths and vulnerabilities and this is what you can expect each cycle and all of that kind of stuff. When you get to know your body better and know your cycle better, you get to know what self-care routine works for you and what you have to do in order to feel your best. So there you have it. That was my big talk on menstrual cycle awareness. Really, menstrual cycle awareness is just a very in-depth way of tracking your cycle and living in alignment with it. And there's really only 3 steps when it comes to menstrual cycle awareness. Number 1, tracking your cycle. Number 2, working with your cycle. And number 3, repeating steps 1 and 2. And so you can do that in so many different ways. Find a way that works for you. If you like to journal, that's great. If you like to use an app on your phone, that's great. There's a lot of apps out there that let you customize what you want to track. Just tracking what comes up for you each day, how you're feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, can make such a difference in your life. There is really no right or wrong way to do this. Just make it work for you and embody the practice as best you can. And I promise you, it will give you so many gifts, and it will help you support your body, and it will help you support your life in so many different ways. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, your cycle matters so much, and I'm here for you, and I'll see you in the next video.